Hello my friends, welcome to my channel, Magpie Reads. I'm Lindy. I'm here to tell you about books. Books are my passion, books and reading. I'm so happy that you are here to join me as I talk about the 8 books that I finished in the past week, plus a few other bookish things going on, including a visit in person from a booktuber friend, Sarah of Roadworthy. She and her husband were in Victoria for a few hours on their way to a kayaking adventure on the west coast of Vancouver Island. I look forward to hearing about that when they come back. But anyway, I had a chance to show off my neighborhood and the gorge where I row and all of that kind of stuff. We saw the little ferries in the Inner Harbour doing a water ballet, fun stuff like that. I am going to leave a link to Sarah's channel below in case you are not already following her. Sarah delves deeply into the books that she reads and always has interesting insights. Now, on August 1st, there were announcements that went up in several places on BookTube, 5 different places. The Art Readathon, a brand new readathon that's going to take place in September. So, if you want to know more about that, look in the description box down below where I will have all the links for you. This is going to be great. So, if you love art, stay tuned. Speaking of art, if you've been following my channel, you might know that I recently read Blue Ruin by Hari Kunzru. And in that novel, he mentions another work of literature, The Unknown Masterpiece by Honoré de Balzac. I'll just wait till that plane goes over. Yes, so it's a short story, sort of a fable, about 3 painters. Now, the introduction to this by Arthur Danto talks about the 3 painters as representing past, present, and future. And, translation, by the way, is by Richard Howard, and he worked with Balzac's most recent version of this, I think was published in 1873. Apparently Balzac kept revising it. Anyway, if you are interested in something to read for the Art Readathon framed in September and you want something short, this book actually contains 2 short stories by Balzac as well as an introduction that's about 27 pages long, so it's not going to take you much time. So the painter representing the past, Fraunhofer, he is a fictional character. The other 2 painters in this novel are actually drawn from real life. The youngest one is Poussin, and the middle-aged one is Pourbus. And in this little passage that I'm going to read, Fraunhofer has been criticizing Pourbus's current work that's on the easel. However, your painting's worth more than the daubs of that impostor Rubens with his mountains of Flemish meat sprinkled with vermilion, his waves of auburn hair, and his clashing colors. At least here you have color and feeling and drawing, the 3 essentials of art. Yeah, this one is definitely all about art, and I enjoyed it. And I'm looking up because there is currently a crow in the eaves trough digging away in there. I hope he's pulling out all the bugs. I don't know if you can hear them or not. So next, here's another really exciting project to tell you about. So, you know, the New York Times put out their 100 top books of the 21st century. And then right away they did another 100 top books of the 21st century that was Reader's Choice contributions. So in all, there were 161 books out of the combined list. And out of all of those, only 5 were Canadian books. 4 Canadian authors represented. So, Jolene of Bookworm Adventure Girl and I were talking about how great it would be if we had a Canadian list of top Canadian books of the 21st century. We're doing it, all right? So, if you read Canadian books, please consider yourself invited to participate. So, I will have a link to a Google form below in which you can list up to 10 books by Canadian authors, and we are looking for books that were published in the 21st century, please. So, feel free to have at it. If you have just one favorite book, that's fine. Submit your entry. You can put in as many as 10. And if you are someone who watches English booktube but reads in French, and you want to name French books as your favorite Canadian books, that's fine. We'll take French as long as it's published in the 21st century. Or if you're like me, I sometimes read French, but I prefer to read English translations. So if you're like me and you're reading an English translation of a Canadian French title, as long as the English translation was first published in the 21st century, that's great. That counts. All right? Is that clear? And as far as what is a top book, best book, that is totally up to you to decide. All right? So, starting Friday, which is August 2nd, and going until August 11th. So you have until Sunday, August 11th to come up with your titles. After that, we're going to start compiling. So submit your favorites if you're a reader of Canadian books, or hang in there and wait for our results, which we will be posting sometime later on in August. So I hope you're as excited about this as I am. Yeah, this is going to be good. I have more bookish news before I get into the books that I have read recently. So the distinguished Irish author Edna O'Brien died on July 27th this year, and she was 93, so she lived to a good age, and my deepest sympathy go out to her family and friends. I have read one book by Edna O'Brien, and I loved it. It was her debut novel, Country Girls, and the reason I picked it up is because I was doing a Books on the Nightstand book bingo, and one of the squares was to read a book that was published in the year that you were born. So Country Girls was published in 1960. That's why I read it, and I'm so glad that I did. One of these days I will get to more of Edna O'Brien's work. Now the Booker longlist was announced, and this year I am very excited about the list because I've read 4 out of the 13 titles, and I have raved about all 4 of those books on my channel. I'm talking about James and Orbital and Wandering Stars and Anne Michael's book, Held. Yeah, I would be happy if any of those win the Booker. Now, and there are 4 others on the list that I was already on the waiting list for at my library. So, like, yay! I'm like on the same path as many other readers looking for good books. And I'm also excited because there are some new to me titles on there. Now, the one that really struck me is the book Headshot by Rita Bullwinkle. And normally a book about boxing, even if it's women's boxing, would be like, no, not for me. But what I've heard people talk about in their reaction to this Booker long list, like for example, Shelley of Shelley Swearingen's channel, she talked about Headshot and it really made me want to read it. So it made me think of another Booker long list, Western Lane by Chetna Maru, which is about a girl who plays squash. And again, I thought, not really. I ended up loving it. So I have high hopes for Headshot too. So let me get on to the Eisner Awards. So this is kind of like the Oscars for comics. And I was really happy to see that women were the winners in 17 different categories. So finally, there's starting to be a turnaround, more recognition for the art of women cartoonists. Yay! So just a couple that struck me. I have already talked about Roaming by Marika Tamaki and Jillian Tamaki, a pair of cousins who've often worked together. That book won in three different categories. And I also talked recently about Caroline Cash's book, Pee Pee Poo Poo, which I laugh every time I see that title, Pee Pee Poo Poo. It's just a queer collection of absurd short stories in kind of an underground comics style. So, on to the books that I have finished, starting with another graphic novel. I've got several graphic novels to tell you about. This one is Blackward by Lawrence Lindell, who is a Black American cartoonist. This is a queer story about 4 friends who are Black and awkward. They decide to form a club in the summer and they call it Blackward. So they have some trials and tribulations finding people like them that they can share their nerdy passions for zines and such things with. There's the gorgeous full color art. And here they show up at the community center where there are 2 people waiting. Y'all think those 2 are here for the club meeting? And in the back we see one guy saying, "Black people need to stop waiting to be saved." And a white person next to him says, "I hear ya." I hope not. He looks kind of Hotepi. And at that point I had to look up what is Hoteps. And I learned that this is a African American subculture that looks to ancient Egypt for cultural inspiration. They do kind of have a run-in with this Egypt guy when they are introducing themselves and ask for pronouns. And this Hotepi guy is not having it. And I love the way his dialogue box looks like a monster speaking over our two of our main characters. We're talking about, yes, pronouns are important. They are not only black and weird and awkward, they are proud of it. This is a great queer novel. It's all about friendship. I loved it. And next I have a picture book. I'll See You in Ijebu. It's by Bunmi Emenanjo, who is a Nigerian author who was born in the US and grew up in Nigeria. And the art is by Diana Ejaita, who is of Nigerian descent, and she lives in Germany. Now, in the author note at the back, it was so cool to read that the artist had just purchased a piece of land in Nigeria, in Ijebu actually, when after that she was contacted to see if she was interested in doing the art for this picture book. So it was like it was meant to be. The story is based on Emenanjo's own experience of being in a Catholic family who travels to Ijebu where her grandfather lives, and the family there is Muslim. And what is so lovely is that both the Christian holidays and the Muslim holidays are celebrated by both sides of the family. So they're there for Eid, and the art is especially featuring the gorgeous fabrics and colors of Nigeria, and there are Yoruba words as well. So yes, lovely celebration of family and the warmth of what it feels like to go home. And next is an audiobook, The Cemetery of Untold Stories. It's by Julia Alvarez, and the audiobook is read by Alma Cuervo. Now, this is a story about 4 sisters who were born in the Dominican Republic, but they grew up in the US. And one of the sisters is a writer. She uses the pen name Scheherazade, and even after 3 decades, her sisters still can't pronounce it. They call her Scheherazade or something like that. So they inherit some little bits of property in the Dominican Republic after their father dies. And how that came about is explained in the story. But what Alma, or Scheherazade, the author, decides to do is use her property to bury unfinished manuscripts. Now, there's a bit of magical realism element to this. She works with an artist who creates sculptures that are like tombstones where she buries each of the different manuscripts. Here's just a little passage from a scene where Alma and Brava, the sculptor, make the agreement about this project that they're going to do on the piece of land. Instead of a handshake, the 2 women fell into an abrazo. It was like hugging both a child and a genie stuffed in a bottle. They held on to each other until that suffocating self-consciousness set in. You are you, I am me. They pulled apart, laughing. Later on, Alma's caretaker, Filomena, becomes quite enraptured with a particular sculpture, who the story that's buried there has to do with a woman named Bienvenida, who was the disgraced wife of the dictator Trujillo. So Filomena lingers in front of Bienvenida's sorrowing face, absorbed, sometimes reaching out to stroke the plaster cheeks. Brava has noticed this affinity as well, but she's not surprised. People do this all the time with art, she says to Alma. At galleries, museums, you sometimes see someone unable to tear her gaze away from a certain face or scene depicted on the canvas, framed, hung on the wall. A Diego Rivera mural will make a jaw drop in awe at all the anonymous hands that make the world run. A Van Gogh will bring back the field of sunflowers outside a childhood home. So I just wanted to read that because it ties in so well with Framed in September, our art readathon that's coming up. The power of story in the Cemetery of Untold Stories is truly a strength in this, as is the playfulness. There's a lightness to this novel that I really appreciated. And yeah, stories of sisters. Yeah, it was good. It was really good. Next up is another audiobook. This one is by a Canadian author, Kate Black. It's called Big Mall Shopping for Meaning. So these are essays about the phenomenon of shopping malls. And Kate Black grew up in St. Albert, which is a city that is connected to the city of Edmonton. Edmonton has the massive West Edmonton Mall that covers about 50 city blocks. It's huge. I think it has 800 different sales outlets in it. It's got a water park, a skating rink, an amusement park, a hotel, over the top. So in this book, she talks about the architectural history of malls and their rise, and now they're on the decline. So you could actually use this book for the art readathon as well, under the architecture category as art. I learned that the very first shopping mall was built in 1958. It was designed by a Jewish architect, Victor Gruen, who fled Europe in the Second World War. His original idea for the mall was that it would be a socialist utopia, so different from the capitalist center that malls are now. So Kate Black talks about the social history, the culture. She talks about loneliness and isolation. She intersperses these sort of larger sociological or philosophical arguments with her own personal experiences as a teenager, really enjoying going to West Edmonton Mall. There is a section about zoos in malls and animal welfare. There is a section that talks about this giant bronze whale that's in the mall, and since I used to live very close to West Edmonton Mall, I went to that mall often enough, and I knew that whale, so I learned more about it. I learned that it was commissioned by the Canadian sculptor Robin Bell, and he modeled it life-size after a right whale. And he chose right whales because they are to be found on both the east coast and the west coast of Canada, and also because they are one of the most endangered whale species. There's lots more to learn about this particular whale sculpture, including the reason why it was moved from its original location, which had to do with men who wanted to sit on a bench in front of the Victoria's Secrets outlet. The sculpture has a name, Open Sea. I'm going to link a blog post about that down below if you're curious to see what it looks like and learn more about it. Now the book Blue Ruin that I talked about earlier, the one that made me pick up Unknown Masterpiece, when we discussed Blue Ruin in my feminist book club, one of the other members said that a work of art that's in Blue Ruin made her think of Vicki Alexander's work. So she is an artist who is also mentioned in Big Mall. It's funny how these serendipitous things happen, but the way that Kate Black brings up Vicki Alexander's work is when she went to see a retrospective of Alexander's work at the Vancouver Art Gallery. She said, "I thought I was looking at a wall of collages, slick strips of magazine photos arranged to form a prism of contemporary North American life. Lots of chrome and brass surfaces, people walking aimlessly in a crowd, a lottery ticket booth, a palm tree and an ocean, a slice of an ad for a Caribbean vacation. Walking closer, I realized the collages were unadulterated 35 millimeter photographs of West Edmonton Mall in the late 80s. The mirrors paneling every vertical surface of the mall lend this effect, fracturing the gaze of shoppers inside and the viewers outside the photo. The vacation advertisement is just the blue waves of the water park. The clipping foreground is just the bulk candy store. While staring straight ahead, you can see the disparate chaos in the three distinct levels of the mall, both beyond and behind Alexander's vantage point. The way holding a mirror to another mirror reflects yourself into infinity." So one of the things that Vicki Alexander's work attempts to do is to expose the constructed nature of places like West Edmonton Mall and Disneyland. And speaking of Disneyland, this next book is an antidote to all of those Disney heroines. I'm talking about the graphic novel Plain Jane and the Mermaid. It's by the cartoonist Vera Brosgol, who was born in Russia. Now she lives in the US. Now this is a middle grade graphic novel. Well, all ages really, maybe grade 4 and up. It's a Victorian era fantasy adventure where a girl learns to love herself for who she is inside, not what she looks like. The premise is Jane's parents die, and she is going to be kicked out of her home because the law is that women can't own property. So unless she marries, and she's got a week to marry, in which case she'll get a sizable dowry, she's going to be penniless on the street because her odious cousin is going to take over. So this book is full of tongue-in-cheek humor. Like there are the same phrases, for example, used in different contexts. There are some layers that readers of different ages or different backgrounds might pick up that others won't. So that's one reason why I call this an all ages graphic novel. And this is from the author's note. I wanted to write my own underwater folktale featuring all my favorite things in one adventure. selkies, evil mermaids, crones, Eastern European water demons in toupees. She further writes, we are obsessed with appearances and we pick it up at a young age, especially girls. We need to be careful which stories we tell. Think of all the fairy tales where the heroes are handsome and the villains are ugly. So much misery comes from clinging to something as flimsy and subjective as beauty, but that's often our shorthand for good and evil. So, yeah. This is fabulous. Loved it. And next I've got another graphic novel. This one is called Girl from the Sea, and it is by Molly Knox Ostertag. It's a sweet, sapphic, silky fantasy, and I would say it's for about grade 7 and up. The setting is Nova Scotia. Ostertag herself is an American writer, but she says that she used to spend her summers in Nova Scotia, so chose this for the setting. In the opening scene, we meet Morgan, who's got a big secret, and that is the fact that she likes girls and she doesn't want to come out. Her big plan is to move to a city to go to college and then come out and live a gay life. But she falls into the ocean. She is rescued by a selkie and romance ensues. It's a gentle story. The colors are beautiful. And look at this. Baby seals. Who can resist baby seals? Now, when I was looking at reviews of this graphic novel, I saw somebody had content warnings that included environment in peril. I don't usually mention content warnings on this channel unless something is really obvious, but it would never have occurred to me that this might be something that someone would be quite sensitive about. But in my case, I really like it when climate change is addressed in the fiction that I'm reading. And I think it's very well done in this case. Yeah, another great book that I recommend. So this takes me to my final book, which has a multifaceted approach to climate change. And that is a memoir called Advocate, a graphic memoir of family, community, and the fight for environmental justice. And it's by Eddie On. His parents are immigrants from Korea. They worked really hard to pay for him to go to university. He studied law, and then he ended up working in environmental justice. Not a lucrative career, so he always felt bad for the career that he chose because his parents couldn't really understand it. And the interaction that he has with his parents is very poignant in here. But his passion for helping other people really comes through as well. In the author's note at the end, he writes, "Saving the planet has been a traditional frame of the environmental movement, but environmental justice focuses on community needs as well as economic equity and the environment." Here he talks about how his idea of a law career he got from John Grisham novels. Here he says, "I've never much believed in hero-driven narratives, no one that I've worked with needs to be saved. He's just such an amazing person, and I'm so glad that I finally got to this memoir that I have seen praised to high heaven, and I know why. Yeah, it's so good to know that there are people like Eddie on in the world. Now, there is a magpie on the cover, and I want to mention that I have been collecting a list of book covers that have a magpie on them. I love magpies. I've named my channel after magpies. This list that I've collected includes only books that aren't specifically about magpies, whether as pets or as or about birds in general. So this is what I've got so far. If you have books to add to my collection, you can let me know in the comments down below. If you have anything to say about any of the books that I've talked about, please let me know in the comments. And also, don't forget your favorite Canadian book or books. There's a Google Doc form. The link is down below. Submit it. Get it in there. We'll count it, and we'll find out which are the top Canadian books of the 21st century, according to you. Thanks so much for watching. I will see you all soon. Bye for now.